Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Intersect. I'm your host, Aaron A-Train Smith, and today, once again, we have my very special friend, road warrior, musician, educator, songwriter, Mr. Rick Elias. Last week, we had Rick on, and, we were just sitting down talking to each other, and all of a sudden, we realized we were on a time schedule. And we ran out of time, and it was like, we got to do this again because we haven't covered a lot of stuff. So thanks to Florentino at Intertalk Radio. He said, yeah, man, go for it. Let's do it. So here we are today, and here's my guest, Mr. Rick Elias. How you doing, Rick?
All right, buddy. All right. Yeah, we kind of got... There's so many paths you can go down, and I think we got right up to when it starts to get interesting, when we were playing together and all that stuff, But,
yeah. And it was like, oops.
Yep, done.
I started playing music.
Yeah.
Yeah, so today, I hope we can go back to LA for a minute, and then we'll catch up to where you are at present. So
sure.
When we finished talking last week, you and your family had just decided to move to Nashville. So why don't you tell us what was going on in LA to kind of bring you to that decision?
Right. So it was about a 5-year process. I burned out in my 20s, and then I met Linda, and I kind of found my faith again and started writing about it. And I was playing in the clubs in LA. I didn't know anything about Christian music. But I was writing songs as a Christian about my journey. I wasn't writing, praise and worship songs. I was writing songs, from my experience. And we were playing clubs. Linda's a musician as well, so she was in the band. I managed to put together a series of pretty good little bands. I even went to the studio a bit and got produced. And that didn't work out so well, and that whole thing blew up. And I just went, well, I'm not doing that anymore. I can produce myself. I think I said last week, I don't need somebody to come in and screw up my music. I can do that just fine by myself. So I had a pretty clear vision at that time and a collection of songs that wound up being on my first album. I managed to finagle some studio time at a good studio, made a demo. This is around 88, and it made its way around the country from one person to another to another. And finally, I was offered a deal with a pretty edgy Southern California Christian label. And I signed it just to put the album out. I came out in late 89, early 90. And we were still in California. That was Rick Elias and the Confessions. Okay. So... And it really kind of took off pretty well, I didn't know what I was getting into, obviously. I had no idea about the whole church subculture and contemporary Christian music. I didn't know about any of that. I'd never heard of any of these artists, Rich included. And but we were still out here, so every time, the practicality of California, most of the people that bought that music were in the Midwest, from Texas up and east. And so, there wasn't a whole lot of activity on the western side of the United States, and even when there was, there were huge, long drives. It's like L.A. to Phoenix to Tucson, to Albuquerque or something, So we would tour, and I think I went on tour with the choir, and we did a whole, probably 6 to 8 weeks worth of dates, mostly in the Midwest and down in the South and on the Eastern Corridor to a certain extent. And it just seemed to make sense, but all the labels were still in L.A. at that time. I remember that, Word and Sparrow and all of them. And then they all up and left around 1990 for Nashville. So we came through, and I thought it was a beautiful place. A friend of mine, a drummer, Craig Cramp, had moved here already and was singing its praises. And it took about a year for us to get it together, but it finally made sense. Yeah, let's move there. The labels are there, the publishers are there. That's where you tour from. And so in October, on October 30th, 1991, I believe it was, we arrived. And I had a tour with Margaret Becker. The label was Belly Up. The tour was out of Nashville. I went on that tour, and then it all kind of fell apart. The label went belly up while I was on tour for the most part, and I was stuck in Nashville with my family. My youngest son hadn't been born, but 3 kids, Linda and me, and I'm like, well, okay, what are we doing now? And I managed to secure a publishing deal with BMG, and that stabilized our finances enough to stay. And I had met Rich in the interim, and then he formed the Ragamuffin Band in '93, and that he kind of pulled me back in. Well, I met him on a trip to Guatemala with Compassion International. That's where we first met, and we became pretty fast friends on that tour. Rich was an interesting cat. It's like the first time you met him, he would tell you the deepest, darkest things about himself. And if you could hang, I think this is what he would do with people. This is what he did with me anyway. If you could hang and go, that's cool, man. It's like, whatever. Then you were, you were all right. If you recoiled in horror at what he was about to tell you, and some of it could be, ugly and stuff, then you weren't friend material, I don't think. But my background, it was like, please, Christian, you are not going to outdo me. I invented self-loathing, pal. So don't even think you're going to go lower than me in self-degradation.
For those of you who don't know, we're talking about Rich Mullins.
Yes.
So, yeah, go on.
Yes. So anyway, we became friends on that trip, but I didn't even know who he was, and then got to know that he was a pretty big cheese in Christian music. In fact, he was riding high off the '80s, and and we kind of stayed in touch. Back in those days, nobody had cell phones, so you'd call, or if I went through Wichita, I'd see him and Beaker and Gay and their hippie commune that they all had there, for all intents and purposes. And it turned out we were all reading I said, hey man, you got to read this guy Brennan Manning. He said, I've been reading Brennan for 2 years, and we had a lot in common through Brennan's writing of, in particular, I think, Lion and Lamb, The Relentless Tenderness of Jesus, and A Ragamuffin Gospel. Mm-hmm. And so they came to me in late '92. I was pretty demoralized. I was on some opening up in Oklahoma City for somebody, and just feeling like, I didn't have a place in Christian music. I was not cut from that cloth. I didn't view the world, faith, or music like the Christian music industry did.
Right.
So I knew, I saw the handwriting on the wall. I just didn't know how I was going to earn a living. And I was starting to get a little long in the tooth. I'm in my mid-30s by this point in time, and I'm like, well, how are you going to earn a living? Or are you going to go back to school or whatever? And then between BMG and then ultimately Rich, all of a sudden coming along and saying, I'm going to put a band together. And you're one of the main guys, or one of the earliest guys. Mm-hmm. And we went up and we recorded A Liturgy, A Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band, which is a fantastic album. A real breakthrough for him. Yeah, a real breakthrough for him, too. I didn't realize I had no context for it, really, because at the time, for what a breakthrough it was for him, because he was really, for the first time, standing up to his label and to his producers and to his audience and saying, here's who I am, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not awesome God guy. I'm this guy. I'm Hold Me Jesus guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite tune on that record.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty stunningly simple, and when you know where it came from, and you know the guy, and I think it comes through whether you knew him or not. I think it comes through. It comes from a place of, pretty intense self-doubt and struggle and all these things that I can relate to. So that was a great album to be involved in. And then he put the band together. But the way I think we started playing together is, the label and his producer at the time, they'd always put him in the studios before with session musicians. Nashville's a factory town, and you got the road musicians, you got the session musicians. Rich hated that, and he just hated that. To him, he didn't hate the people, but he just hated the impersonality of it. And he wasn't allowed much input into his records. I don't even think he was allowed to play on them, other than hammer dulcimer. And I remember him telling me one time that's why he learned hammer dulcimer, because he knew the producer would never find a hammer dulcimer player. So he would get to play on his own album, even though he's a pretty good piano player. Okay, so the band.
When I first saw Rich, I was commuting here from Sacramento, and I hadn't made the decision to move yet. But
because Charlie and Jimmy were here. Right. Yeah. And your old buds.
And I was at Jan Volz's house, where I happened to be staying during that trip. Right. And I was going through his record collection, and it's all contemporary Christian music albums. And I stumble on this one album with this pretty boy on the cover. He's got on this red jacket, his hair is slicked back, and he's sitting in front of a campfire. And I go,
right. Yeah.
And Jan goes, oh man, yeah, that's Rich Mullins, man. Yeah, that's the cat, man. Yeah. And I go, wow, yeah, okay. And when I met him, he was nothing like that.
He looked like a hobo,
Yeah, he's a hobo.
He really did. He looked like, he's just like no shoes on, unshaven, smoking, hair greasy.
I was going I'm going to have to get a wardrobe to hang with this guy. And then when I met him, it was like,
it was it could be a bit of a shock,
Yeah,
and so we went out and we played, I think, Cornerstone with this hybrid band. It was really Jimmy and me, I think, were the main two first guys for the Rags. And then it was sort of padded out with some of his buddies from Wichita, Lee Lundgren, and some of his old-time pals, Billy Crockett, who lived in Texas, great player. And then Chris McHugh and Eric Dark and some session guys. And those guys weren't going to go on the road. And I don't even think Rich invited them on the road. I mean, he wasn't interested in that. They did a great job on the album. I mean, there's no questioning that.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
But so then he began thinking, I think, in earnest about really putting a real band together. Now, Rich was not a band guy, so he didn't really know anything, as you know. I mean, he didn't really know anything about putting a band together or leading a band. I mean, he was kind of this crazy DIY thing. I mean, Sometimes you'd see him on stage and there'd be some guy up there, plucking away on a mandolin who'd never played it before. It's like,
right.
It seems like sometimes it seemed like he'd just let anybody up on stage with it,
Yeah, it's like,
so,
where did this guy come from, Rich? Oh,
yeah,
I met him
who
when
are
I was
these
getting
people
gas.
all of a sudden on the tour? And they all have beards and they all smell like patchouli oil. And it's like, what world have I walked into here? Well, I think as it really came down to needing a bass player and a drummer. I knew Mark, Jimmy knew you, and that is really how the four of us, I think, kind of became the Ragamuffin Band. I think it took a while, but certainly by late '94, after Brothers Keeper came out. And I think you came in and played on that. I kept insisting that you play on it because he didn't think he needed to hire a real drummer. He thought he could get one of you just sit at the drums and play. And I'm like, this is horrible. This is like the worst album ever made. And it turned out okay. What I didn't know is how clever Rich was. Rich knew that was his last album for his label. And he kind of just wanted to, give him the Bronx salute with it. It's like, I'm not bringing in the producer. I'm going to do this. We're just all going to go in the studio and make music. And I'm going to, everybody's a producer and it's still sold. Like, I think it still sold like 250,000 units or something. And it didn't really have any strong singles off of it. His audience was so devoted to him. And I get it now because he was really the only voice that was speaking to that slice of the Christian culture that didn't march lockstep necessarily with any denomination. I mean, they might be, but he kind of was a unifying factor between very odd and bedfellows. I mean, whether they were Catholic or Southern Baptist or whatever. We played at all kinds of churches. There was never a church. I think we must have played every kind of church there is in America, and there's a lot of them, So, and he was always very welcome. His music was. He had a unifying concept. And I think that was the interesting thing about Rich, because most of us get a little confused. I mean, I don't think I could get up and just talk to one subset or another subset of Christian thought and necessarily hold my own. I kind of have my own thoughts. I put them in my songs. If you like them, great. If you don't, that's fine too, however you want it. Rich was able to. Yeah.
We got to take a break right here. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Welcome back, everybody. Just before that break, we were talking, my guest and I, Mr. Rick Elias, about his time with Rich Mullins and the Ragamuffin Band. So let's take it up from there, Rick.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jumped on you there. Well, I was just going to say, I think by 95, then the band was solid. It was you, me, Jimmy, and Mark. With some added characters, the Kid Brothers of St. Frank and whatever, but yeah, it was a pretty solid unit, and it happened right around that time in 96 that he was leaving his label and going to a new one. So that's what brought us to the Jesus record, because he finally had a solid band, and I had never seen him so excited about the future, but he'd never really talked about the future before. It was all kind of day by day. And he had earned his right. He was commercially successful. The label that signed him Word, we're very excited to have him on board, and basically we're ready to support just about anything Rich Mullins wanted to do, which was a lot of stuff. Yeah. And that's when we began preparations to do the Jesus record, which I think he felt. I remember meeting with him up in Elgin. I don't know if you were there or not. I don't know why I would be there if you weren't there, but it seemed like we were all talking at one point, and that he really felt like he wanted to make a kind of a break from his past again and make a record that just concentrated more like on the commonality of what we believe rather than the divisions. And there were some very personal songs, but also you had My Deliverer, which is very majestic and with a a big marching chorus like that. And I remember I was at during that interim 95 96 is when I got the gig with That Thing You Do. So I was in the Ragamuffins. We were on the road.
Yes, we were on the road, and you left us.
I did for 2 weeks. They left us. I know it was. I didn't know if they were going to let me go. I thought Gay was going to freak out, and that would have broken my heart, because that would have stunk. But they were. Rich couldn't have been more supportive. He's like, "No, go, go do the sessions."
Oh, but dude, it was so empty. Let me tell you.
Thanks. I'm glad I was missed. You
bare
don't
bone.
want that. Yeah, you don't want that. There's nothing worse than leaving, having no one notice that you were gone. That's never a good thing. But so all that started to happen, and he gets
how did you get that?
Deal
how did you get the?
It's just one of those crazy stories. The short story is 10 years like back in the early 80s, I was in a band with a bunch of guys, and we had a sound man, and the sound man said, "Hey, I've got a friend or a family member, a cousin who's in the music business." And we're like, "Yeah, sure you do. All right, whatever." And we went up to LA and we played at one of the clubs, and of course there's nobody there, but this guy came, and his name was Gary Getzman, and Gary was producing Stop Making Sense, that great Talking Heads movie. And he was working with Jonathan Demme, the famous director. Wasn't quite so famous then. Well, I fall out of touch with him, and the other singer in the band, he kind of stayed in touch with him, but he kind of fell by the wayside. I was on tour, I think with Margaret, and ran into my old co-lead singer in Tampa. He had moved there, and I said, "Well, he'd heard my album and he liked it." And she said, "Man, I'm so proud of you. You really pulled your life together, and music is great." Blah blah blah. He wound up moving here, and the first question out of my mouth when he got here, like I think in '94 or maybe early '95, I said, "What happened with you and Getzman?" Because by this time, Gary Getzman had produced Philadelphia and Silence of the Lambs.
Really?
By '95, yeah, two of the biggest movies, and it couldn't have, he said, "Well, I just couldn't keep up. I couldn't compete with all Hollywood's so competitive, and you're dealing with, my friend was a singer and an okay co-writer, very good co-writer actually, but he wasn't a producer, so he just couldn't keep up with the output of other people, and it just never worked out." And within 2 weeks, he said, "You'll never believe who called me." Because Getzman called me. He's doing a movie with Hanks, and they need a song. So we started, we went into my home studio, and we started writing, and they already had That Thing You Do. They already had that song. We didn't know that. So we wrote our version, which is at the end of the movie. And they loved that. And so they said, "Well, write another one." So we wrote Dance With Me Tonight, and they loved that. And so then they sent us a script and said, "Write a song called All My Only Dreams." I said, "Why would I? That's a weird title." They said, "Well, yeah, but it's in the script. Tom wrote it." So we wrote a song called All My Only Dreams. It's in the movie. We wound up with 5 songs in the movie and about a third of the soundtrack. Yeah, it was just one thing led to another. Yeah, it was awesome.
And you made an appearance in the movie as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, in keeping with my record blink, you don't want to blink when you're watching the movie because you'll miss me. It's like a nanosecond. Boom. We were already out there doing post-production anyway, fixing tracks for the movie. I ended up playing the guitars and stuff when you hear the Wonders, or most of them anyway. And then I played on the underscore with Howard Shore conducting, and with the orchestra. So it turned out to be about a year, going back and forth here and there while playing with Rich and producing other stuff here in town. And so then we got up to the Jesus record, and then we got that bad news, on September 19th, 1997. We were supposed to go in the studio a week later. Yep. And that was earth shaking on a personal level, and for me, because I really liked Rich a lot and really felt a certain kindred spiritedness with him, even though we were very different. And certainly for the audience, that his audience that he built up, that adored him, maybe too much. And he did his best to try and disabuse people that had we all saw it, how he could be. If he thought somebody was fan worshiping him, he could be brutal with them.
He's brutal.
Oh man, yeah.
I can still see him walking. He just had this walk about him, and both knees out of his jeans, a t-shirt on, and it's just like, get out of my way. I don't want to be bothered.
Yeah, I know. He was I really enjoyed my time with him, and he was in a good place when he left. He really was in an excited place. And, we didn't think we were going to go on and make the record. I don't know how you're going to make the record without the lead singer, but if you remember, the label, his family came to us, his foundation for Native American children. Everybody said, we still want the record to come out. Rich would have wanted it. And I think we all got together, just us four, and talked about it and prayed about it and went ahead with it. And it came out, exceptionally well. It was really an act of curation, I knew Rich and I had the good fortune I knew what Rich wanted, and I knew what I wanted to do on the record, and I'd already run it by him, the bullet points. Let's use this guy. Let's do this. Let's do that, blah, blah, blah. And so nobody was able, and the label was wonderful. It was the one time in my life when the project and the label and everybody at the label and even people outside of the label, retail and radio, all seemed to be on the same page. They wanted to get this music heard, and it got heard, Now, the touring that we did afterwards, I think it started out was just going to be 6 weeks. Then it turned into 2 months. Then it turned into 6 months. Then it turned into a year. Then it turned into a year. It just kept going. Yeah. And that's when I look back now, that's where I wish I had just said, no, I'm not doing that. We made the album. We had great time, but we had great times on the road. It was cathartic for the people that came to the audience, came to the concerts, but it absolutely demolished my almost too much of what I'd worked so hard to build up in the way of sobriety, in the way of my own career. And it just, when we came out of it 3 years later in 2000, after we played for the Pope in Rome, my career was over. I mean, it was just over. I was, I had waited so long and worked so long to get to a place where people were calling me and saying, and then we sort of disappeared for 2-3 years. And I got, if I had one more person come up and call me Rich, it's like, I'm not Rich, I'm Rick.
Really? Yeah.
I just think there was just transference, and those concerts were very emotional. It was hard to sing those lyrics night after night. Yeah. And I don't handle grief well, and and I did not handle it well. I relapsed. I kind of went into the hole, and then that caused a whole chain of events that went into the next 5-6 years of just trying to get a grip on my life and a grip on what had happened and that type of thing, But all in all, the experience with Rich and with the Rags, I think, was a positive one. We were strange bedfellows. I mean, if you think about it, the four of us probably never would have formed a band on our own. Right. It took somebody putting us together, but once we finally clicked, I thought there were nights and times when it really had some kind of a thing, Oh yeah, it really had turned into something, but
yeah, doing the cups and all that stuff, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but you speak of all that touring, man. When it was over, and I came back to Nashville. There was nothing here for me. It was dry as a bone,
Yeah.
And I started doing odd jobs.
I think that happened for everybody in the band. So you look back on it and you kind of go, well, it is what it is, But yeah, that happened to me too, and I think it happened to Mark to a certain degree. And I don't know, Jimmy's like a cockroach from Chernobyl. He'll survive anything. So I never worry about Jimmy.
Jimmy really plunged into his photography and painting.
Right.
And that's he started.
I was still trying to pull together. I was still trying to pull together any shreds of musical career that I could, even if it was on the other side of the desk. As a publisher or as an A&R guy, I kind of did that for a little bit for a small Messianic Jewish label. You know, I was just hoping to find a place, a point of purchase, you know, so I could hold on, you know.
Did you ever think about going back to L.A.?
But at that point, no, because we had plans in '97 of me going back out there once a month for about a week. And, you know, working the streets, you know, just staying in people's faces and trying to pick up some more work. And it probably would have worked had I done that. But when Rich died, it was just that all bets were off. Yeah. And we just went into Rich world for the next 3 years, really, essentially for almost exactly 3 years. And, so when I came back up, it was like, no, I mean, I think I went out there a couple times to see if there was any spark of interest. And it was like, you would have thought I had done that thing you do, you know, in the 1960s. It had only been like 4 or 5 years, and it was already such old news to those guys. You know, they're just moving on, you know.
Yeah, while we were on the road, the music industry was changing.
Yes, it was
in Music City,
radically.
and all the business centers from music were changing. Studio stuff was changing. Pro Tools came into the game.
Piracy, the whole Napster thing, you know, and then iTunes came along there shortly thereafter. The entire business model was upended for the music industry. And with it went that middle class. Guys like us who made our living on the road or writing songs, or guys in studios. I mean, work is still being done, but nowhere near the level that was being done in the 90s, you know. Yeah, you're right. The town changed, we changed, everything changed in those 3 years. You know, and then it was a matter of rebuilding at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like while you were away.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
This happened.
Hey, we forgot to tell you there's no music business anymore. Yeah.
Oh.
It wasn't quite that bad yet, but it came pretty quickly. I remember in 2002 sitting there thinking, there's a tsunami coming at us or on the horizon. I don't think am I the only one that sees that thing? Because I got a feeling we're all going to get swept out to sea. And sure enough, within a few years, it was like, whoa, you know, sea change, you know.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, hey, man, we're coming up on another commercial break here.
Okay.
It's been great. I want to give a shout out to my guys over at Pt.2 Audio and SIR. Thank you guys for your support. All you listeners out there, we'll be right back after this message.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pt.2 Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pt.2 Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pt.2 Audio can help make it happen. We are Pt.2 Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pt.2audio.com.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
For the light, hanging on for dear life. Who am I? Do you know me? If you know, well then tell me. Ring those suffering chimes. Tell me whose fate is mine. Do you feel like an angel or a pawn in a fable? Son of Job, son of betrayal. There are no strangers at this table.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Intersect, and my guest, Mr. Rick Elias. And before we get back to our conversation, I'd just like to say thank you to the guys over at Innovative Percussion. They make my sticks, and so, you know, they're good with me. So shout out to you guys. Hope everything's going well over there today. I need to pay you a visit very soon. I'm running out of wood. Okay. And Rick, man, we really covered a lot in that last segment about
We did, didn't
our
we?
days
Yeah.
with the muffins. Yeah, that was cool. And
Yeah.
I know, like after this fog cleared, you start doing some other things like teaching, and
Right,
I want you to tell everybody about that and how that
Well,
works. And
Yeah, I have a friend, Warren Pettit, who was running a music program on Martha's Vineyard called the Contemporary Music Center. And he had asked me before, he'd been there since about 2000, he'd asked me to come up there before. And I was always too busy or just couldn't, Martha's Vineyard isn't really on the way to anything. And, finally around, I think it was the summer of 2009, I was kind of looking and I just went, well, I'm not really doing anything. I could go now. And I called them up and I said, hey, how about they hire adjunct instructors? And I was in a really bad case of writer's block. I hadn't written a song for quite a long time, a very long time at that point even. And I thought, well, maybe going up there for 14 weeks and communing with nature and, being alone and maybe it'll set something free. And I wasn't really sure you could teach songwriting, but I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I knew some of the people they'd had up there before, and I thought, well, no, those guys don't know how to write anything. So it's like, you might as well get somebody who's actually written something, that somebody actually heard at some point in time in history outside of their parents. And so I went up there, and it was great. I had an A-frame cabin overlooking a pond. It was fall. It was beautiful. Martha's Vineyard is kind of a lovely, magical place. It's just a different kind of environment altogether from the mainland and certainly from Nashville. And started teaching, and all I can tell you is I'd never been on an island for that long. The only way to it was to either fly in or take the ferry. And boy, by the end of my stay there, around week 10, I started feeling it. By week 12, when I had 2 weeks to go, I couldn't wait to get off the island. It was just too much. Just seeing the same people over and over.
3-hour tour.
Yeah, I know. That's what. Yeah, I really, seriously, it's like you see the same people all the time. Because you're on an island. There's no things you don't think about. Nobody locks their car. Somebody's going to steal your car on the island? Is just go to another part of the island and they'll find it. So weird stuff. But it was a great time. Came back, and then the school that summer moved here, and right to Brentwood, no less. And so I picked up my position again. I'm just an adjunct. I'm not a tenured instructor there. And I've been teaching songwriting now for 15 semesters.
Wow, that's great, man.
Yeah, and just kind of trying to find a way into young people's minds to teach them in 14 weeks, not a long time, something of the history of songwriting, something of the techniques of songwriting, the basic fundamentals of songwriting, and then just getting them to, it's not a conservatory, so our standards for bringing people in can tend to be lax. We've had some really super talented kids come through the program, but every now and again, it can be, a little bit more challenging trying to get through and getting them to learn more chord progressions and to sing better. They get up and perform once a week, and then they do a tour. But all in all, it's been such a, it gave me a soft landing out of my career, because when I had the shoulder surgery and it limited my ability to play, I really needed, I think teaching was something that I was fairly passionate about. I took it very seriously. I love doing it. I love my students, and it gave me a way to vent all that creativity into my classroom as opposed to on an album.
Yeah. Well, I want our listeners to hear some of that creativity. So,
okay.
And I don't want them to miss this part. So I'm gonna jump in, and what we're gonna do here, folks, is we're gonna play the title cut to Job, Rick's his last solo record.
Right.
The record is amazing, unbelievable. Here we go. Ricky Elias. That rocks, man. That tune rocks. I love that tune. I love the record. I got to tell you a story. I had a friend visiting here from Virginia on Friday, and we came down in the studio because we were trying to hang on the deck, but it was freezing cold. So we come down in the studio, and I go, man, you got to hear this record. And so I started playing the record for him. And by the time we finish A Kind of Brilliance, he's going, who is this guy? I've never heard this record before. And so he takes out his phone and he goes to his notes and he writes down the title, the artist, and he goes, when I get home, I'm going to get this. And I'm going, yeah.
Well, thank you, Aaron.
and then right after that, he leaves, and Susan has finished working by then, and I drag her downstairs, and I'm going like, you got to hear Rick's record. And we sit down here together and we listen to the record, and she loves it. She loves it.
Good.
So
well, I it's just, to me, it was, and I know we don't have much time left, but it was, so interrupt me if I'm getting long-winded, but I really wanted to write a record. The Book of Job resonated with me. It just the story itself. And there've been, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's been suggested that maybe it was the first book written of the Bible. If so, what an interesting way for God to introduce himself to mankind with this story, of it. But it's so big. It's such a big story. I wanted to take the idea and contemporize it, not contemporize it, just find the thread between then and now. And to me, it was about disconnection, which is a kind of suffering. So the stories in the song and on the album, there aren't that many of them, but they're all stories of disconnection of from God, from each other, from reality, there's from one's own self, and that to me was the common thread. I could have very easily, I guess, focused on things like, when we think of suffering, we think of health issues, we think of monetary poverty, we think of, racism, we think of all kinds of huge issues that have plagued mankind forever. But I couldn't go that big with it. I had to find this kind of thread, which really the thread is that we are not, when we lose connection with each other or with God, that's where the problems come in.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. That was my feeling on it. That was the true cause of suffering. That there's not enough empathy to help those that need help, or there's not enough love for yourself to even help yourself, or love of God to even serve him, much less hear his voice, Well,
I'm going to have to stop you there, bro.
Yeah, buddy. That's it.
We did it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for coming back and doing the second show. And I love you, a great friend of mine. And people, you got to go get that record. You've been listening to
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rick. God bless you.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pt.2 Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pt.2 Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pt.2 Audio can help make it happen. We are Pt.2 Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pitbullaudio.com.